The following program is a Town of Colonie television production of the William K. Sanford Town Library.
Welcome to Getting to Know You. My name is Joe Nash. Today we're going to be talking about the Albany Pine Bush Preserve. We have with us the Executive Director, Chris Hawver. Welcome back. Been here a few times.
Thanks,
I
Joe.
should just say before we get going, as everyone knows, the Pine Bush Preserve is 3,200 acres, right in the middle of the Capital District, 18 miles of trails. They have all kinds of events, a Discovery Center. We're going to talk about a lot of them. And it's only one of 20 inland pine barrens ecosystems, not just in the world, not just in North America, but in the entire world. Right, Chris?
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
So why don't we start with this? This is relatively new, since you guys deal in geological time.
Yep.
2014 is pretty new. In 2014, the National Park Service designated the Albany Pine Bush as a national natural landmark, and you got a big exhibit out there.
Yep.
Currently, it goes till June 30th. So why don't you tell me about this?
Sure.
This designation and the exhibit and what's.
So we have this rotating exhibit that we have, and we call it the Exploration Station. And the Exploration Station, we have a theme.
It changes every couple of months.
Changes. It used to change every 3 months, and now so much work goes into it.
Yeah.
We leave it up for 6.
Okay.
So this one focuses on the National Natural Landmark, and the reason we got that designation is not just because of the rareness of the pine barrens of the pine bush, but even more specifically, the sand dune formations. So the geologic history that's associated with the pine bush. So it's the largest inland sand dune formation on the East Coast.
Oh, okay.
So that's part of the designation as well. So the Exploration Station, this exhibit now, looks at the geologic history, the sand dune structure, how sand dunes were created, going back to glacial times. It talks about the whole National Natural Landmark Program, which is nationwide, of course. And probably the most interesting thing, there's an augmented reality sandbox.
I see.
So you move the sand
Yeah.
into sand dunes, and it shows the topographic lines when you move the sand.
Okay.
It's based on a projector and an Xbox Connect.
Okay.
It's an interesting.
So
it's fun.
Now you don't. Excuse me. Now you don't want just people to be going to the exhibit. When they're done, they can go out and.
Right. Then they can explore the pine bush. So if we don't have a program scheduled, so you can come into the Discovery Center. You can look at the exhibits. Certainly, experience this new exhibit. Talk to the folks at the front desk, visitor service staff, ask them, what should they go and look at? And they'll say, how long do you want to go out for? What would you like to see? And they'll give them some advice.
Now, does this designation bring any people from other parts of the country to come and?
It does.
Do they just come to study, or do they just come to walk and look around? Or?
They come for a variety of reasons. Because now we have a passport stamping program that's part of these national parks and national natural landmarks. You can have your passbook.
Okay.
It's like a big passport book. So you go to national parks, you go to places like this. We have a stamp.
Oh, okay.
So it's somewhat of a novelty, but it's almost like a hobby. So people go to different areas and they get their passport stamped, and this is a place that you can do that now.
Okay. So that is there till June 30th, but the dunes are always there. Correct?
Dunes are always there. Dunes won't go away.
All right, the next thing we have coming up, and I should say everything will be on the screen here, albanypinebush.org, all kinds of events. One of your big events, maybe your biggest, you have the Lupine Fest, which is on Saturday, May 20th. It's a Saturday, right?
Yep, Saturday, May 20th.
Okay, I'll
Here's
hold
our
this
flyer.
up. Lupine Fest. This is your big event. It's this is the 11th, I guess. So, and it's a typical kind of thing like you would have at a festival. They have vendors and food and face painting and old-fashioned photo booth and music and all that stuff. So, tell me about this event and what you're planning for it. And
well, it's our big event, like you said, Joe.
And I should say, last year you had a couple thousand people came to this.
We did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, last year and the year before, previous years we would have up to maybe say 800 people, and we marketed it more towards families and activities, and we brought the refrigerators in last year and the year before, a local band, and each year we had over 2,000. Last year and the year before. So this year we have B95.5 FM, the radio station.
Okay.
So and they'll be broadcasting live, and then they give out free things, and they'll talk to participants. But a lot of the things that are going on there, we have live wildlife demonstrations. We have at least 2 of those.
Well, it says here on the website, the event is sort of a celebration of local wildlife.
Right.
What would that encompass?
So that would focus primarily on a lot of the native species that we have. So, they'll have raptors like hawks. They'll have owls. Sometimes they'll have turtles, other reptiles or amphibians. It depends on what mammals they may have available.
Okay.
It depends on who's willing to travel, who's willing to come by.
When people are at the festival, they can go to the vendors and listen to the music and all that, but everything's open, the trail, the Discovery Center.
Trail. So there's guided hikes. There's a number of hikes that are going on. There's presentations. Like I said, there's live wildlife. There's games. You said face painting. You can... For $5, you can buy a T-shirt, a white T-shirt with our logo on it, and you do a tie-dye.
Okay.
So a lot of our staff will help with that, and kids have a good time with that.
And I should say, the most important, this is a free event.
It's free. Absolutely free. 100% free. The only thing you'd have to pay for is if you bought food there or if you bought something from a vendor. Okay. Everything else, or a T-shirt.
And then I guess you were telling me before we started, though, on this one day only, the parking is different for
parking's
you
different.
Can't go to we're right there on 155.
Right. So if you go on our website and you look for Lupine Fest, you can see that'll be on there. You park on Washington Avenue Extension. So that's in the BBL building.
Okay.
BBL is donating their parking lot.
Is it near that end?
Yes, it's right near the end of Washington Avenue Extension where it meets Route 155.
Okay.
And it's on the southbound side of the road. And there'll be signs for parking. So you park there, and then we'll have shuttle buses that'll bring you over to the Discovery Center. And if you're disabled in any way, you certainly can park at the Discovery Center. But with 2,000 people last year, we had to figure out our parking a little better.
So hopefully, the weather will be good.
Yes. Yes. If it's not, we'll be disappointed.
All right. And then another thing, you can see this on the website. I thought maybe we could talk about a lot of these different.
Sure.
When you're not just having festivals and all this, you have events all year round.
Yep.
You have hikes. You have theme walks.
Yep.
You have lectures. You have all different kinds of other events. You have things that are like ongoing, I guess you would call. They all have their different names, like Wild and Wacky, Legends and Lore. You have Friday Walk and Talks. You have Citizen Science. Why don't you talk about each one of these, what they all are, and how often they occur, what kind of stuff people can...
Well, I can tell. Well, let's start with Friday Walk and Talks. So that used to be, we used to call this
once a month? Or?
Once a month.
Okay.
It's the first Friday of every month, and it's at noon. And we started that for folks who live, or not just live, but primarily work in the Pine Bush area. So there's a lot of office buildings that are...
They can just pop over on lunch hour?
Right, so they can come out, nice day, go for a walk, and the focus is that it's for adults. So it's there's
different theme each
week. Yeah, there's different themes. And it's basically to get folks out of the office for 45 minutes during the week. So every Friday we do that. So that's the Friday Walk and Talks.
Every first Friday.
Every first Friday. I'm sorry. Thank you. Every first Friday.
So, and what's this? I noticed on your calendar, there's a lot of these events called Citizen Science.
Yep.
What is
so Citizen Science it's kind of the new and upcoming thing for conservation organizations like ours that do a lot of research, that do a lot of scientific monitoring, looking at plants and animals. To be able to help us do more and understand more, you work with people, just citizens. So you come up with ideas that are
these
anybody.
They participate in your research, kind of? Oh, okay.
Yep. So you have maybe neighbors who live next to the preserve. Yeah. Maybe you have people that will just come and visit and help out with different things. So Across the country, there's different ones like Frog Watch.
Okay.
So there's a Frog Watch one to basically identify frogs that are calling. So in the spring they call, the males call for females to mate. So like peepers, right?
Yeah.
Spring peepers.
Oh, okay.
So there's a citizen science project for Frog Watch nationwide. So we're
Is this like the people that track birds for different groups?
in a way, yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
All right.
So we have there's a backyard feeder program. So people who identify in their backyard what species, who's stopping by, what species are stopping by at the feeder, and they identify them.
Okay.
So think specifically for a bird. Some of the bird species are the eastern whippoorwill, which is a bird that has this really interesting display. The male spins up into the sky and does this dramatic
Mating dance?
mating dance up in the air. It's very impressive.
Oh, okay.
So we have citizen science folks that come out. We train them what to look for, listen for the sounds, listen for the mating ritual. And they're trained, and then when they're in the pine bush or different areas, they identify whether or not they see whippoorwills or hear whippoorwills.
Oh, okay. So, and then these are, a couple times a month?
Yeah, citizen science. We have.
They're on the webpage.
They're on our webpage.
There's a calendar.
There's a brochure. Is
Yeah.
it this way? That way?
That's good. That's
way.
good. Yes, that's okay. I'll take it.
Here, you take it and you
Yes.
show it.
So I think we have these at the library.
Yeah, they're at the library. We have them at the Discovery Center, and that's also online. So if you go on our website under Get Involved, that would be there. So in May, there's 3. Whippoorwill, Full Moon Frog Watch, and then there's one called IMAP Invasives, where you actually use a smartphone to identify an invasive plant or animal species on your phone, and it goes back to a state database.
Oh, okay.
We have another Frog Watch training in June, and then June 1st, and then in late June, there's one for Firefly.
Yeah, I was going to say, I just pulled this one up
The Firefly
as an
one
example.
is very interesting.
This is going to be on June 28th.
Yep.
8:30 at night it starts. It's
Yep.
called the Firefly Watch, and you're actually having scientists come from the Boston Museum of Science, Tufts University,
Yep.
and Finchburg State are going to team up with your
Right.
citizen scientists. So that actually looks like a pretty interesting one.
Yeah, and the whole idea is it gives us information, and if it's a broader research question like this in the Northeast, it's answering a question that's even broader than just the pine bush. But you can have families do it. So kids come out with their parents or guardians, and it's something enjoyable, and they're actually helping us answer scientific questions.
So all these citizen scientist programs are family friendly.
Yep, and they're all free.
And now, is there a big firefly population in the? Are they gonna,
Fireflies.
Is that the question they're going to?
Well, the question is that fireflies seem to have populations have dropped in some areas, but not others. And the question is why?
Yeah.
Is it habitat? Are they being predated on by something that we don't know about, or is it just a normal cycle? We don't know.
Oh, okay.
I remember as a kid there were firefly everywhere.
I think they were all. I remember them as being more prevalent, I guess.
I do too, but that's why we want you and I should be out there counting fireflies.
So these, and then again, they're on the calendar. These citizen science events take place a couple times a month.
Yep.
I notice you also have something called. This must be more combining history with the natural history stuff. It's called Legends and Lore. What are those programs?
The Legends and Lore, that focuses on, we do that, we typically always do this program. We do it a couple times a year, but we always do it for the New York Path Through History, the week. And it focuses on the history of the pine bush, where people, it was kind of a shady...
Not the natural history, the
no,
more history
the
of people.
human history,
yeah,
the social history. Yeah. So you had, there's stories of ghosts and shady characters and burglaries, and it was a place, the pine bush was a place where people of
dubious
character personalities, etc., would hide out between Albany and Schenectady.
Okay.
So staff and volunteers dress up in period clothes, and people have a good time with it.
So back then, in between Albany and Schenectady, what was that? That was like sort of the Wild West in there, or what?
Yeah, it was. I mean, because there were some taverns along the way.
Yeah, okay.
And it was just completely, undeveloped and scrubland, as they used to call it.
Were there any houses in there?
Not many.
And did people live in there? Wait,
not
okay.
shady folks.
Okay, shady. So the legends and lore, you explore some of the
Some of the human history, and that includes a short hike, a little less than a mile.
Okay, and they always have different theme, whatever
Yep.
they come up with. So that's for people interested in history.
Yep.
So I notice also several times a month in your on the calendar you have a thing called Wild and Wacky with different. What are those events?
The wild and wacky, well, that depends on we look at different species and some of the habitats that they and how they part of their natural history, and the education staff does their best to try and make it a little more fun instead of too science heavy.
Okay, and that for families.
That's for families too.
So you might explore one animal or one.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Right. So that's more for younger family or families with younger kids.
Oh, okay.
And then we had talked about before, or in the beginning, we were talking about the science lecture series.
Yeah.
That's kind of like we're trying to have things for families that have younger kids and then older kids or just adults. And that's like the science lecture series.
Well, I know. Yes, I was going to say the one final thing on here is actually a real lecture in a lecture hall with scientists from where they all over.
We had a hydrologist that came in last month that talked about the hydrology and looking at groundwater and how it interacts with surface water and wetlands in the pine bush. He's a private consultant but a geologist. In late May, we have a person coming in looking at he's an ecologist, and he's looking at basically studying how animals respond to habitat restoration, and looking at, with the whole Albany landfill, with their expansion, that required a 250-acre habitat restoration around it. All restored habitat, restored pine bush habitat.
Around the landfill.
Yes, basically on the northern side of it. Okay. So there's the thruway, there's the landfill, and then there's all this habitat that's been restored. So this ecological firm that works for the city is looking at how do animals respond. So how do small mammals, how do birds, how do insects respond to this habitat restoration? So the question is, does it work?
Okay.
So that's one example of it. And that happens, science lecture series are once a month.
Once a month, and they're all on the calendar. Now, why don't you talk about a little bit, because you just mentioned the thruway and the landfill. The boundaries, I mean, I think the pine bush is like right in the middle of the Capital District, just about, isn't it? And you can sort of see it from like all over the place.
Yeah,
you might not even know you're in it sometimes.
Well, that's what happened. One thing that we realized in going through a whole strategic planning process about a year and a half ago is, reaching out to the community, having these focus groups and asking people different questions. Is people don't know how big it is or where it is. Like you said, it's 3,200 acres.
So you can be in it and not even
know you're there. So if you look at it from an east-west, you think about Fuller Road, all the way up to the Schenectady County border.
Okay.
Albany-Schenectady County border. And then if you go north-south, you have Central Avenue in Colonie and Western Avenue in Gilderland.
Okay.
So it's this huge, the whole study area is over 13,000 acres. And within it, we have 3,200 protected.
And a lot of it is right here in Colonie, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. There's a lot in Colonie, Gilderland, and Albany, all three municipalities.
So it sounds like there's a lot going on out there. Let me just, have I forgotten anything? Oh, why don't you talk about the
fire program?
Yes, we talked about that once before, and it sounded like it was kind of sounded like fun, even though it's when you have the prescribed fire.
Right.
This is when you actually have to burn things.
Correct.
To
maintain the pine bush.
And I think the last time you were here, I mentioned you probably would get a lot of volunteers that would want to help you. But I shouldn't joke about it, but what is a prescribed fire? And you guys do this a lot out there.
We do. So just quick background. So the pine bush is what we call a fire-dependent habitat. So all pine barrens require fire to maintain them.
But that's the best way to...
That's how, so fire basically will remove competition, it will expose mineral soil so plants can germinate, it will help plants set seed, and they won't do that. Those opportunities aren't presented without fire. So you can't, there's really no such thing as natural fire anymore, right?
Yeah.
Certainly in Colonie or Gilderland. So what we do is we mimic natural fire with what we call controlled burns, very distinct areas, or prescribed fire. So
And this actually helps the ecosystem.
yes,
right?
so it actually it promotes the plants that are native to the pine bush, that's a globally rare ecosystem, and the animals that are dependent on those plants.
Okay. And how,
So we burn, we use prescribed fire to burn anywhere from 2 acres to 50 acres, anywhere from April, once the snow is gone, to whenever it gets too wet and cold, which is early December.
so you just do this when you feel you can get it done, or do you?
No, we prepare, we basically have management units throughout the preserve. We have over 400 acres prepared for these areas that, our science staff have looked at that need to be burned to help rejuvenate them. And then we wait for these very, very exacting weather conditions.
Oh, okay, got it.
So you have to have winds of a certain direction to carry smoke away from sensitive areas. You have to have winds of a certain velocity or speed. So you have to have a little bit of wind, but you can't have too much wind, obviously. It can't be too dry, but it can't be too wet.
Okay.
So
These aren't on a regular schedule?
no, so it's anywhere. So if you think about from April 1st to December 1st, that's a long period of time. Last year we burned 3 times.
Really?
The year before we burned maybe 14.
Is that because
It's because the
only
conditions
3
are-
days were met the criteria?
Correct.
Oh, wow.
Right.
So you really
and
gotta-
it's prescribed burning is very exacting anyways. But when you're in an urban area or suburban area, it's even more so because controlling your fire is obviously the utmost importance for safety. But in our area, we have smoke we have to deal with.
Oh, okay.
So you have a throughway, you have other roads, you have nursing homes, you have people's homes. So you have to be careful where smoke is going to drift by choosing your wind directions and your atmospheric conditions. It's very
I know. I mean, I'm going to say, just talking about before,
Exacting.
Your borders are like, you have all these places that you
right.
really-
Right. So you have Central Avenue and Western Avenue, and you have the throughway that goes right through the center of the pine bush.
Jeez. All right, well, I think we've covered everything.
Okay.
But let me just, one more time, Saturday, May 20th is the Lupine Fest. There's all kinds of events going on. What time does that start?
That's 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock, sponsored by B95.5. It's a festival-type day. Besides, you can go out on the hikes and go out on the grounds, but there'll be all kinds of music, food, vendors, and actually stuff like a wildlife tracking workshop.
That's right.
There's going to be the Carnival Blue Butterfly contraption. What is that?
That's like a Rube Goldberg contraption. You know those.
Oh, yeah. With the
It was actually created last year. There's a woman who's a retired engineer from GE. She has volunteered with us for literally hundreds of hours. She does a lot of data entry for our science work, and she helps with the bird banding. She designed this thing.
Oh, okay.
And it does all these different things that interpret the Carnival Blue Butterfly's lifespan, and also incorporates prescribed fire. It's very clever.
Okay, so it's a little like it sounds like a.
It's
How big is it? Is it a big?
it's big. It's probably 15 feet long
okay.
by 6 feet tall.
All right, so that's the contraption that also begins with a K.
K and
then music by the Whippersnappers.
The Whippersnappers, they're a local folk group that they'll be wandering around in the morning, and it goes until 4 p.m.
So the whole event's
It's free.
10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Saturday, May 20th, the Lupine Fest, the 11th annual. Well, thanks for updating us
Thanks, Joe.
on the Albany Pine Bush Preserve. It's albanypinebush.org. There's calendars, a lot of good. Your website's very good. All kinds of stuff on there. So thanks once again for coming.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to come in.
And we'll probably see you next year. And we'll see you next time on Getting to Know You.